Now, come on now, what is you gonna tell us about the Sawyerville,
Hey,
Perry County connection?
Well, I don't know
Billy.
whether y'all, the story goes back a long ways.
That's all right.
Here's the Heiberger connection.
But it's the Heiberger Sawyerville connection, really.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, Helen Martin, my Aunt Helen, she's a key player. She lives in Greensboro. She was the daughter of our grandmother's sister, right?
Yep.
So she was the first cousin to all the May children. And when she was
I don't know. We still
had gotten enough education to do a live-in teaching job.
All right, now where do you
A
live?
live-in teaching job was right down here on the May place. So she came down and was the teacher for the boys, for Stephen and Tom and Freeman and Albert, I guess. I think the Aunt Coma and Mama, well, Mama and Aunt Helen were just about the same age. But anyhow, my Mama and Aunt Helen became very close. She lived here on the May place.
Here we go.
And Aunt Helen Martin, said that she well remembered that any time that, and Uncle Stephen in particular, if he wanted to get through and go hunting, said he could get his lessons in 2 hours. But said if it was too bad he couldn't hunt, said we would sit there from daylight till dark. He wouldn't get his lesson. But anyhow, she taught down here for 2-3 years or so, and then she went back to Greensboro to Old Southern University. And my grandpapa, who was William Fletcher Moore, he lived out at before it was called Heiberger, that part of the county. In 1892, he moved into Marion so his children could get better education. They'd gone as far as they could out in the country. So they went to what was then the female seminary in Marion Institute. Then in 1904, he moved back to the country, and all the children had gotten their education except the youngest. That was Uncle Clifton. He'd gotten through high school, but he hadn't gotten through college yet. So what they did was send him, after he had worked for 3 or 4 years, they sent him to Southern University in Greensboro. And that's where he and Aunt Helen she had gone back to school to get more education. So that's where they met in about 1911. And they were married in 1912, and he took her home to Heiberger, which was in Heiberger because our grandfather Moore had started the post office, and the place had become known as Heiberger. So then Mama and my Mama and Aunt Helen were very, very close, just almost like sisters, even though they were cousins, but Aunt Helen had lived here with the family. But Mama came over to visit Aunt Helen and met my daddy, who was the oldest boy in the family. Aunt Helen had married the youngest son, Clifton, but my daddy, he was a little slow about getting married too. That's been a characteristic in our side of the family. And so he had been in Birmingham working as an accountant, and he came home and they moved back to Heiberger, and Mama came over to visit Aunt Helen, and they met. And so they married. He was 38 years old at the time. That was his first marriage, and so that's the way the two of them met. My mom had visited over there. So that was in 1914. They married, came home to Heiberger, and actually lived in the house that you know as being our house, the Mamie Moore house, Wallace Moore house. Lived there with Aunt Helen and Uncle Cliff. The two couples lived there together for a few years in that house. And then Uncle Cliff went on to further his education. He wanted to be a doctor. He never quite made it. He ended up being a chiropractor. As one of our old colored ladies used to say, he started out to be a doctor and he shot a blank. So he didn't quite make it. That was Dovey. Dovey used to say, Mr. Clifton, he started out to be a doctor, but he shot a blank. But he almost got his doctorate, his medical doctorate degree, and went to Mobile and then eventually to Texas. But anyhow, that left Mom and Daddy with the house that you remember playing in sand with in front of that house. But
Brooks, can I get you to
Yeah.
hold on just a second? Let us change this film. We're running out of film.
Is that a digital camera?
You know the truth about it. I'm gonna tell you what it is.